Okay, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. I know the Zoom chat is so hard without emojis. You could do it from your keyboard. And also there's a little cheat I'm going to give y'all for your Chrome extensions. There is a Chrome extension I use called, hold on, my Facebook is loading itself. So give me a second, y'all, because it's not doing my hover the way I like it. It's called Joy, Joy Pixels, Pixels. If you download Joy Pixels into your Chrome extension, it allows you to be able to click and put emojis wherever emojis can't go on their own typically. So Joy Pixels works. And so I just wanted y'all to know that you have that. And it is free $99. All right. I am so excited to welcome you all to session 2 of the Rooted Collaborative Pop-Up Conference. Conference about our mental, our spiritual, our physical health, our personal well-being, our professional level up. Fabulous content brought to you by our very own and by experts who understand the work that we do and how we do it. And this has been such a wonderful day, starting with karaoke on Friday night, which was a mess. That got me through it, okay? Because Friday was tough. I was still like on the sick and shut-in list. And then happy hour on Sunday that turned into such a deep conversation around identity. And then Monday and Tuesday night, just being able to get our fix on such tough that we don't get an opportunity to talk about. And so tonight we're taking a turn to the career. So we started first with thinking about how we look and how we show up in the world and what that looks like in our closet with Anthony. And now we are turning to a resident expert fundraising coach, 20 plus years in the game, understands exactly, not only is she a fundraiser, but she is the super fundraiser, which I love, and have had the pleasure of being in community with her for the last few years. Although we have not yet done a project together, Aliguma, so we have got to figure that out so we can go. Look, clients would not be ready for us if we went in there together.
They're not ready. But we gonna get them ready.
And combust with us together. You are a light. I'm telling everybody a little personal story about how I know folks. And so you and I came into knowing one another, I want to say a few years ago, when you were first sort of figuring out like when you were going to step out and do consulting for real. Because a lot of us did dabble in it for years, y'all, before we really decide like, no, this is it. And you had an organization and I was interviewing at that organization, and you and I had to be able to start a relationship and start talking. And we just kept alongside each other over the last couple of years. And so it has just been a joy to see you to step into your purpose in this new season of your life, and to be able to affect so many people. So I'm glad that you are here with us tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to you so you can give us some more color on your background and some more depth that you choose. And then the floor is yours. And we got all the way to 8, and Maisha's already on, she knows. And so we'll just go on with how you going. And the floor is yours.
All right. Well, I will throw my screen up here and just know that this is not a quiet conversation that we will have. So please throw out questions, throw out commentary. Let me get the chat up so that I can follow along. I'm guessing you'll probably be highlighting for me.
I will.
Donna.
I'll shout you all the time and keep you abreast on questions, and I'll also be in the Facebook group as well, and I'll bring it over.
Excellent. All right, so my name is Aliguma, last name Young. I always love to give the quick tutorial. People get really intimidated. My family is from Uganda, and my name means the one who endures up to the end will be saved. And the way you pronounce it, just think Muhammad Ali Guma. Very simple, very phonetic. I am the descendant of a Ugandan family. I'm first generation American. That shapes so much of who I am and how I exist in the world. I'm also a mom, which is probably one of the most important things to me. I have 3 babies. This is an older picture of them. They are 19, 9, and 8. My 19-year-old went to college early, so she will be graduating, well, theoretically, if you will, in May. She'll be getting her bachelor's at Georgia State. I live in Atlanta and have pretty much been here for the last 20 plus years. This is home. I'm never leaving. I kept trying to move away and try out different places throughout my career, but it always kept calling me back. And in my career, I've had opportunities to work in higher education and fundraising. I've worked at small community-based nonprofits in fundraising. I led a large capital campaign for the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. I also worked with the Teach for America as a development coach, working with regions across the country. And now I have a company, the Super Fundraiser. And in that, I work with predominantly education and youth focused organizations to help them do all things fundraising, both providing one-on-one coaching as well as providing interim fundraising support and doing customized training for their staff, board, and volunteers. So that's kind of who I am and where I'm coming from. And why I get really excited talking about careers is because career work is the center of everything that I've done. And part of it has been me learning little tricks and tips along the way. So I never had a fear or an anxiety about getting a new job, um, being a part of an interviewing process. But what I found is that, particularly for women of color, that's often a space where there's not a lot of information and there's a lot of knowledge about how to move forward and how to even think about your career and what you're doing. So the first thing I wanted to do was just talk about why and where you are when you're thinking about making another move, and what are all the factors that you should be thinking about. Most people, when they're thinking about making a move, are focused on 3 things. Growth opportunities. You feel stagnant, you feel like you can't move forward in the role that you're in. Organizational culture. You just don't like the people you're really working with. You don't have someone who's nurturing your career. I call that the kind of who's your mama. And then you don't have somebody who's really protecting you and blocking and tackling for you and helping you to get additional opportunities, kind of that who's your daddy. And when you don't have those people and those resources and you can't bring your authentic self into your workspace, then you start to feel like, why am I here? I want to be somewhere else. And then the last thing is the straight up dollar and cents of it all. You're not making enough money. You're doing a lot of work and you're not getting paid for it. So that usually are the things that you start thinking about, that you focus on when you're looking at your next opportunity. And what I want to start with is kind of reminding you to start thinking about all of the pieces that are a part of your next move that are going to have a big impact on your experience at the next place you go to. So when you're thinking about making a move, start with doing an inventory of where you are right now. What's going on with your family? How does your job and your current role support your life and experience with your family? When I say family, that doesn't just mean a spouse and children. That also means if you're caring for a family member, if you're just as an individual, as a human, are you in a job that's supporting your personal well-being? And then also, if you have children and a spouse and a partner and all of those things, how does your role support that? The work that you're doing every day, Do you enjoy it? Are you doing a job that is truly in line with the things that you're best at? And do you have a good sense of your skills? Do you have growth opportunities? Do you have the work experience to do the job? A lot of times you're doing a job that you're way overqualified for, or you're actually not very qualified for because you don't have the experience and the skills to do it really well. So you spend a lot of time trying to learn how to do the job rather than excelling in that role. Your manager and your leadership, oftentimes you're taking on a role and then your manager leaves. And so now you're really having to think about, what's the management style that I need in order for me to thrive? The benefits that you're getting beyond just health and medical benefits, what additional benefits are you getting from your role? Can you work from home? Can you have access to resources when you travel? Do you have flexibility if you want to launch your own business while you're working in that role full time? The benefits and the non-tangible things are equally as important. And what you see here is that all of these things have an equal level of importance. Now, if just one of them is missing, it's not going to tumble down. But if enough of those things are not there, the salary and the organizational culture is not going to be enough to keep you there and to keep you thriving holistically. I'm going to take a quick pause here before we move on and see if there's any questions, thoughts, or reflections on that.
I'm just like, teach me your ways, Aliguma, because this pillar is dope. I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I just love the visual and how you're just like having us think about the considerations we have. If there's any questions in the chat, I don't see any right now. Folks are just like glued in and just listening and paying attention,
Perfect.
which is our way in our group.
Cool. I'm going to keep it rolling. So, what do you want? Typically, people focus on three things: more money, a more senior title, and a new work environment. When you're thinking about more money, though, a general rule of thumb is, don't leave your job unless you're going to be making at least 30% more in your salary. Because you can pretty much get a 10% increase from just the annual raises, within 2 years, you'll have that salary. So as you're thinking about, okay, I think I want to make a move, you should be making a move of a 30% increase. And then you also might want to think about changing in the type of organization that you're going to. So for fundraising, there is a hierarchy of salary that's involved. That the highest level is hospitals and healthcare. That's where the most money is, through grateful patient fundraising and work in that space. The next tier down from there in terms of salary and stability is higher education. From higher education, the next place that has higher salaries and sophisticated systems, processes to support you would be your large national nonprofits. And then from there, you're looking at large local nonprofits, which is like your zoo, the aquarium, places like that. And then your lowest kind of tier in terms of salaries is typically your community-based nonprofits, your local homeless shelter, places like that. And when you're thinking about even within those spaces, there's also a hierarchy of what, the bigger the brand, oftentimes people think bigger brand, more money, and it's actually the opposite. So the larger the name or the brand of the entity, typically the lower the salary, because quite frankly, they don't have to pay you a lot because you're going to come to them. They're going to get, for every posting that Children's Healthcare of Atlanta puts out, they're going to get 100 applicants. not only locally, but nationally. Compared to a smaller hospital that may not have that brand name, they have to work harder, i.e., pay more and provide more in order to attract qualified applicants. The other thing that people look to is a more senior title. I put that second because oftentimes in fundraising, people will chase a title when what you really should be looking at is, are you getting more responsibility? Are you getting an increase in benefits? So kind of what I was talking about before, can you have more flexibility with your time? Can you be more creative with the work that you're doing? And then do you have more access to decision making? It doesn't make sense to have to go from being a director to a senior director position if it just means that you have more responsibility, but you don't have more ability to make decisions, because it's in those decisions that that additional responsibility can actually be put to use for the success of the work that you're doing. The third place that's important to look at, that people typically start to look for a new opportunity, is because of the work environment. When you're thinking about a new work environment, it's so important to think about, do you have a strong work-life balance? I do believe strongly that there's no such thing as separating your life from your work. I think this current reality that we're in is showing that in a very real way for everyone. That, but just for the sake of what we've all been kind of conditioned to think about, there does have to be a sense that you can be fully who you are and do the things you enjoy while doing the work that you enjoy. Having authentic work relationships. There's nothing worse than being in a work environment where you don't like them people, and that's how you feel about it. And then the third place is having increased stability in the workspace. And so what that's really referring to is, are you in a space where you're worried every week if you're going to get fired? That's not going to be a healthy space for you. If you're concerned about making payroll every 6 months, that's not going to be a safe, stable space. And so that's something to also be thinking really strongly about. All right. So you know you want to go to get to that new opportunity. Essentially, you need three things: a resume, a network, and some skills. Your resume. The whole point and purpose of your resume is to get you an interview and to provide information for the conversation when you're in that interview. After that, once you get an interview, that resume has really no purpose in your search. A couple of things that you have to have in your resume: it has to be mistake free. Today, I received a resume for an opportunity through someone in my network who the person misspelled Gmail on their resume. So when I went, I just literally copied and pasted the email, went to send an email, and then I got a bounce back. And I was like, well, that's weird because I just copy and pasted it. And so I reached back out to my contact when I realized that it was that error. Now, because of my relationship with the person and my desire to be helpful to this candidate, I told them. Most people will not do that. So just having somebody else take a look at it. Grammarly, if you do not have Grammarly right now, download it. It should be on every device that you have. Grammarly corrects everything you do. It can correct your social media. It can connect because it connects to your Chrome. And with that, your work will be error-free for the most part. Easy to read. If it's hard to read while you really love all of the experiences that you've had, you kind of want to aim for short, simple sentences. This should be written at essentially a second grade level, because you've got to remember that most hiring managers who are looking at resumes are getting 20 to 30 that they have to go through in a short amount of time, because they still have to do their full-time jobs while they're doing a hiring process. So what they are looking for is something that very quickly they can see what you're trying to do. So what are you aiming for? What is your experience? And what skills do you have that show that you have been successful in doing this job in the past? That's why having quantifiable impact numbers is so critical. Do not have on your resume things that say like, I did this thing in my job, I did that thing in my job. They can look at your job description and get all that information. What they want to know is, what is the impact that you had in that place. So you want to make sure you're showing the increase with percentages or increases with numbers. And that should be in every single bullet point that you have. On average, just to have a sense of how long should your resume be, typically it's 5 pages, 5 years per page. So if you don't have at least 10 years of experience, there's no reason for you to have a 2-page resume. In terms of for each job experience that you have, on average, you should have 4 to 5 bullets. And if you've kind of done the same job at each place where you've worked in your last 3 jobs, don't put the same bullets every time. Conserve that real estate and just highlight the biggest win that you had in each of those spaces, particularly if you have more experience and you have a longer resume. Don't just keep repeating the same thing, because then the reader will stop reading after about 2 that they see are kind of the same. Your network. The first piece of networking is always offer something. When you're always in a position of asking for something, as we as fundraisers are taught to always be asking, and I believe in that as a fundraiser, that's our job. We should always be asking. We should always be getting something out of it. When you're thinking about your network, you should also be thinking about how you can be offering support to people and reaching out with some kind of regularity. One of the things that I do is I have a calendar appointment for twice a month, and I just twice a month, I spend an hour just reaching out to people in my network, sending messages, looking at their LinkedIn profiles, and looking at their Facebook, seeing what they've got going on, and then just sending out messages, and then sharing 1 or 2 wins that I have had recently, so that when I need that network, it's already warmed up for me. It's not cold. The other part of that is, in addition to that, I do an hour a month on LinkedIn, where I also just do that, going through that next tier of people where it's like, yeah, you're in my network, but I actually have no idea who you are. And during that hour, I literally just go through my newsfeed and start reaching out to people who are in my newsfeed that I just don't know. And then the last piece is your skills. Have you done a skill assessment to know what you're actually good at? And are you really clear about what your superpower is? And how are you using that superpower in other spaces beyond your day-to-day? So for me, my superpower is relationships. I am excellent at building and maintaining relationships. So in everything that I do, I talk about that. I say it in interviews. I say it when I'm talking to friends, when I'm asking for someone to help me get a reference for something. I always talk about the fact that relationship building is the thing I do really well. The other thing I do is translate that into the extracurricular things that I do so that it's always clear that that's a component of my brand. And I know that there's been conversations previously about brand development and how do you think about your brand and how do you think about who you are and how you present yourself. That's a big part, is knowing what you're good at. And the biggest reason you want to know your superpower is because that allows you to build your brand in your network, but it also provides an armor against feeling any type of imposter syndrome. Of course, you're going to have imposter syndrome for lots of reasons in lots of spaces, but one of the best ways to protect against it is to know what you do well and to know the things that you don't do well so that you can have really honest, transparent conversations with your current and your future employers about the areas where you're going to need additional support. That's what I have for today. I'm going to turn off my camera.
Okay, Aliguma, you know I already have questions, friend, because I was like, let me just sit at your feet for a second. I'm gonna play because you drop like nuggets all the time on Facebook, and then you like roll out, and I'd be like, wait, say more. So there are a couple of things that I would love for you to double click on a little bit for us. And Maisha is gonna come in right after, and she's gonna talk about what your resume says about you. So I know she's just like getting ready to get in. So you set her up wonderfully. So my question is, when we think about the two things you said, one, how we discover our superpower. Many of us, and we've talked about this the last couple of nights, are in like fight or flight mode all the time. We're like operating in sixth gear. You know, we have to do so many things for our organizations, our families, etc. And so you've been able to really zero in on how you identify and exercise your superpower. So any advice or thoughts, particularly because there's so many articles, you and I have seen them, we talked about them, about all the productivity that should be going on now. That's a lot of noise happening. But if we're going to hone in on ourselves, any advice on how we start to take those steps to do that so that we can really zero in on what our superpower is so that we can start to really exercise that out with our network?
I think one of the best ways, especially in this moment, to go about that is to start asking people, what do you think I'm really good at? What problems would you have me to solve? When you're really struggling with something and you just pick up the phone and call me, what are some of those things? Because those people who are closest to you will be really honest with you and will help you to hear that and feel that. One of the other kind of fun exercises is to look at what are the things that you really admire in other people, because that also will give you clues into things that you don't think you do very well. So when you think about who do you call on when you're struggling with something, so who are the people that you're like, oh, if I have to do this thing. So for me, one of the things, for example, would be I am not great at being at hearing a conversation and then putting it into notes that anybody can read. And that actually is also just like, if I get a whole lot of information at once, I can organize it for me, but nobody else could access it. I have a dear friend who is a chief of staff, and she does that so masterfully that we can have a meeting and 5 minutes later, she sent out notes with everybody's assignments, everybody, all the next steps. It's super clear, super organized. That's not who I am. Yeah. That's one of the things, though, that I took on a year ago to tackle and to figure out, what are my systems? How am I going to get good at this? What tools do I need? What I went to conferences about it. I started reading books about it. And I didn't put pressure on myself to solve that problem instantly. I just recognized it as, oh, This is just a skill I'm going to have to learn, and I'm going to still rely on people who
Yeah.
do it really well
Yeah.
when I need them.
That's absolutely true. If you think about strength-based leadership, and you know, that's something I really like hold very close to me. You and I could track, we're alike in that way. Like, I'm just like, my notes, look, I'm gonna show y'all, look, transparency moment, bloop, bloop. These are my notes from a client meeting of onboarding today. This looks like chicken scratch on a good day. Meanwhile, I'm like, this is just magical. Like, I know the arrows and what conversation and what I need to do first, second, and third. My poor ops manager, Tiffany, she's on here. She's like, don't send me that. Don't send me any more screenshots of this foolishness. But in the same call that we're on, we got off the call. The notes are inside Google Drive already organized. So one of the things that I had to recognize was, who can I partner with? And when I was on team in organizations, and I did not always have the luxury of having an assistant or a second, there was always a teammate who was like, just give it to me, because what is happening over there? Because they know that if it was time to verbally synthesize a situation and run it down, they would just look at me and go ahead, Kish. Because I was never going to be a superstar in that documentation process. And it used to like hold me back and make me feel like feel so bad about myself because I just couldn't get it. And then I realized, oh, I need to just be dangerous enough to recognize when others are really great at it and figure out what I can offer. Because I love that you said to offer, so that I can do that good exchange on what I'm gifted at, and I can borrow a little bit of what they're gifted at. But you got to educate yourself, which I love that you said that. You were like, I may not be perfect at it, but I'm going to be educated around how to manage through this thing. So I love that. In the chat, we see that we have folks. Michaela says, I can't even type because I'm too busy scribbling notes. Gems, gems, gems. Nice. Adetola says, yes, this resonates. And if I would make Adetola share her screen, she would have all of these typed notes organized and in a table, because that's how her mind works. Okay, it's amazing. She says, you know I do. She'd be like, to the point where I'm like, you just send me the notes, because her notes are way better than mine always. Okay. Oh, we have some more questions Adetola for you.
Salary. Yeah, I see that. So in terms of how salary impacts geography, it tends to be the same across because of cost of living. But one of the things that is important, particularly for women of color, is to know that you're going to get higher salaries in more rural communities because they have a harder time getting the diversity. So in Atlanta, a job might pay $75,000 for a director of development. That exact same role for the same organization in Indiana would pay $95,000 because they couldn't get you to come to Indiana. But there's all sorts of people in Atlanta, in New York, in DC, etc., who are diverse candidates, who have a lot of experience, who have the education, etc. So when you're thinking about locations, the thing that I encourage is to look at, is that somewhere you want to be? Because every role that you take, and I've moved for a number of opportunities, and what I found was that you spend time building up a network in that space, but then if it's not a place you really want to be in that supports you for your family, for yourself, do you have a network there to support you? Do you have friends there? Do you have access to resources? Without that piece, it's hard to enjoy that experience. And that's why you want to
love that you have talked multiple times about enjoying the experience as a criteria for work-life balance. Like, you just, when you said that at the beginning of our chat, I was like, you just, that, because I'm always talking about like the pendulum. I'm like, there's not a balance. The things swing, but you brought it down to that. And look, Maisha's jumping over at 8 o'clock because she's going to talk about it. The experience. She was over here in the chat. I was looking on Facebook quotes. Aliguma, you can't see them. And she was like, this is a whole sermon. Just in case you needed to know. So I just want to just name that's just a succinct and just a powerful way. Please put that in one of your quotes so that we can reshare it on Instagram and LinkedIn, etc. That it comes down to the experience that you want to have for your life in that season. I think it's so critical. So you just named that. All right, y'all. Do we have any more questions? Come on, we have sage advice tonight. We have an experienced fundraising coach here who's a part of the collaborative, a part of the crew. She's always here around for you, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat now or unmute yourself and ask so that we can just have access to this wisdom. I think people are just stunned, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. I want to screenshot every slide. Okay, Giselle says, I'm reading out loud so people on Facebook who are watching can hear. Oh, Jackie says, we are stunned. Giselle says, I struggle being a jack of all trades and not knowing when to say no so that I can grow, and I don't know which direction to grow in.
So what I have now learned on this end of my trajectory and in my journey in fundraising, I started my journey in fundraising saying, I want to be a VP. And I don't know why. I think I just was like, well, that's the highest title. So I just want that title. So I'm going to do whatever I got to do to get me to that point. And then when I got to that point, I was like, okay, it's not what I thought it was going to be. And I didn't really have a set of criteria in place of what I wanted and where I wanted to go and what I enjoyed. So what I would say to that of like, how do you figure out which direction to grow in? I think you just have to pick a couple of things. And that's why I really focused on those 3 points, which is salary. So like, how much money do you want to make? And while that can't be the final answer to your question, it just gives you a nice guardrail so you can start moving in some direction. Because quite frankly, there's just some pathways that you can take where you're just going to hit a ceiling and you're not going to get above that. If you don't want to manage people, there's just a salary you can't get past. If you don't have management experience in fundraising and in nonprofits, there's a point where you cannot progress beyond in your salary. So kind of getting an idea of like, what's the salary that I want to have? Then the second thing is, what type of responsibility do you want to have? Are you a person that wants to be starting new stuff all the time? So are you very entrepreneurial in your thinking and in how you want to exist? And are you one of those people? I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, but I haven't always had the entrepreneurial risk that was needed in order to feel comfortable not having a regular salary. I didn't feel comfortable not knowing where my check was coming from, but I have an entrepreneurial spirit. So I was always looking for ways in which I could be getting a regular check every 2 weeks, and I could be trying new things and having new projects and having brand new experiences all the time. So understanding kind of that piece of it is really important. And then I think the third thing that can help you with figuring out where you want to go is that skills assessment. Because when you really understand what your superpower is, then you can start asking those questions of people who, once you build out your kind of internal board of directors, because everybody should have their, they call it like your kitchen table board of advisors, I call it my board of directors. And when you go to those people, you should be able to say, hey, I'm really good at building relationships. I'm really good at managing data. So what are some good, if I'm trying to make $150,000 a year and I'm really good at managing data, but I really don't want to manage people, what's some good directions that I should be looking at? What are some good organizations that I should consider? What are some good industries that I should look at? There's some, as I was sharing before, there's some things that you can do in higher ed that you really not going to be able to do with a smaller local nonprofit in fundraising and in nonprofits. So you want to know kind of like where can your skills and your interests and your passions be put to use, and that's where that feedback loop will help you in guiding towards where you're going to grow. And then I think the most important thing in all of this is to throw away this belief about should. And what I really encourage you is to, anytime you start shoulding on yourself and you start saying, well, I should be here in my career, I should have this salary, I should have this level of management because I know more than this person, you're moving in the wrong direction. Because anytime you're doing that, that's telling you and indicating to you that you have set an expectation and you've already decided that you're failing. And anything that is rooted in failure is not for your good, because you should constantly be thinking about the things that you are successful at and what you're good at. And so when you're thinking about what you're good at, what you enjoy, what you like, and how to do more of that, then you have an abundance mentality versus a lack orientation.
Good. I want us to answer this one next question here. Jacqueline wants to know, so building on the jack of all trades question that Janzel started with, how do we not become a jack of all trades when many of our organizations are understaffed, and as fundraisers, we always feel someone's got to do it and we are that somebody?
Learning how to get really good at saying no. One of the best books that I've read so far around that is Essentialism, which is a book that talks about how to do the one most important thing rather than doing a million little things. Because that one most important thing is what will move your work forward and will drive your success. Without going way, way deep into it, essentially what that's saying is that while, yes, you may be called on to do many, many things, that's right, there it is. While you may be called on to do 50 things in your role, that doesn't mean you have to do 50 things in your role. One of the biggest nuggets from that book that I got was this idea of, if it's not an immediate yes, then it's a no. And I've been practicing that for the last 2 years, and you'd be amazed at how efficient you become at saying no to projects in a way that doesn't get you fired, to be real. The other thing that is important to do is to ask yourself the question, what problem am I trying to solve? So with the tasks that you're doing and the activities that you're doing, constantly keep coming back to, what problem am I trying to solve? And does this activity actually solve that problem? Because that will also help you to narrow in on what you do well. And so that when you are saying no to something, then you root that no in your areas of expertise. Hey, you want me to do this random event? That's not in my wheelhouse. I don't do events well. So I think instead we should do this thing, because this is actually how we solve the problem, one, and we do it in a way that it's in my skill set so that I don't have to rely on additional resources in order to accomplish this goal.
Ooh, you pulled out the additional resources card. You were like, you trying to conserve resources. I'm trying to be resourceful.
Okay. And that's what it is. It's hard to say no.
I love that. Okay, one more question for you. So Adetola wants to know, how do you think through role shifts and advancements within your company? Specifically, which path to take now to best set up your long-term trajectory at your organization? Part B, what role should knowing which people you want to work with play into that decision making?
Who you want to work with should have no impact, because people leave. and people transition. And if you build a decision based on a person, you will get your feelings hurt every single time. If you do go after because of a person, make sure that whatever promises or resources that you're going to get from that person are institutionalized into the role and are not just institutionalized into your relationship. Again, because people will leave. In terms of thinking about within your role, how to think about your next steps, that really requires a lot of conversations and doing a lot of observations about what's happening and what is real and what is not. And what I mean by that is that you have to look beyond what you're being told is how things work and really rely on one of the greatest gifts of being a woman of color is that we are the most vulnerable. So we learn really early on how to assess situations for danger and how to look at what could go wrong in a space. And because of that, you have to really rely on that. Don't rely on just what somebody else tells you how it goes. Oh, yeah, you'll be promoted in a year. When you can see clearly that none of the things that are needed for you to be successful, to move forward, are even happening. So really relying on that, also making sure you have a champion there. That is different than a mentor. A mentor is somebody who gives you advice and gives you insights. A champion is somebody who's willing to use their own political capital on your behalf. And if you don't have a champion, it's going to be really hard for you to progress in a way that doesn't require you, because most often women of color are underpaid and overqualified for the role. So you want to make sure that you have a champion who's helping you to skip levels, because more than probably 90% of the time you came into the organization 2 levels back from where your experience, education, and network actually should have placed you because of your racial and gender identities. And so when you understand that and you are looking in that way, don't be limited by what somebody is telling you. And don't be afraid to apply for jobs outside of the organization to see where you sit, because it's easy to get comfortable where you are and to start forgetting how great you are and how talented you are, because you might be kind of getting dumped on in your current role and you may not be very successful for some of the reasons that we already talked about.
Woo! I just throw it. Just let me throw a tissue. Where's my tissue? Listen, I just want to say, Aliguma, let me just. I see Maisha writing notes. Maisha's about to be like, let me just come on, because this is so many jewels. You are such a gift. I mean, seriously, friends, y'all know that Aliguma is a part of the crew. So I keep telling y'all every single night, we have talent upon talent upon talent upon expertise upon talent. If you have not perused through who is in our Facebook group already, and that doesn't even include who's in the email list, like, y'all need to really be digging in to see what type of resources we have so we can action the lives that we want to be living. And so I just thank you so much for your wisdom, for just breaking it down so softly for us tonight, and just pulling us in so close, and then being like, and now, and because you just really just have such a touch, just a special touch. I love that. It's really, really clear to see why you are the fundraising coach, like clear. So thank you so much for tonight. Everybody said we are still stunned and mesmerized. It's true. Y'all gotta get some water, because Maisha about to come in and close it out for you. Tiff, let's stop recording for a second so we can reset.